is going to be the tallest object. The lowest object is going to be those three cups, the cup, the can, and the apple right down here. And then we're going to have this bottle and the cup or mug rather forming this angle right here. So you can see this is the general shape of my composition. Now, it is a guideline, but I'm gonna try my best to stay within these lines because it'll help to keep the composition together, right? So now I'm gonna start to think, what's the furthest object to my left? And that's gonna be my apple, right? And I'm thinking how tall is this object relative to my tallest object over here, right? So this is my apple down here. I'm thinking about this space. And relative to that larger object right here, right? So I'm thinking right around here is this object. Again, I'm gonna do the same thing with the can. How tall is this can relative to the tallest object? I'm gonna bring up my next line. I'm also thinking about the spacing, right? How far off is the side of this can from the side of this apple? I'm gonna bring it up. Next is the vase, same idea. How far off is the side of the vase from the side of the can? All right, I'm gonna keep it simple into a rectangle as well. How high up is this vase relative to the can? I'm thinking right here. And finally, how high up is this vase relative to the largest vase in the background? And that vase seems to be somewhere around here. Now, before I start to put that line down, right, I'm pretty happy with the height of these objects. I'm going to also now to think about this shape here. Now I'm gonna kind of nail down the shape a little bit more, get the curve in there, just to make sure that the side of my objects are in the right placement. Now this vase is a symmetrical item, meaning that both sides should be the same. And I can already see that mine was a little off. Somewhere around here, right? So I'm gonna go back in there with my eraser. Now I'm not trying to get into detail yet, but I am again trying to adjust just enough so that I can place these items where they belong. All right, and now finally let's start working into this larger vase in the back, and it seems like it's around the right place. I'm thinking about how wide that vase is relative to the one that I just defined down here. So if this is this vase here, this is about almost, I'm using the side of my pencil to measure. This vase is gonna be a little bit thinner than this one right over here, but just a little bit, not by much more. So I'm thinking right around here. Again, keep it simple. I'm keeping it as a rectangle right now, not getting into the details just yet. All right, now this is the top of this vase here. Curves out just a little bit, right? This is the top. Using organizational lines, I'm gonna bring that line across, and I'll notice that that next vase is below that line. This is the opening. And if I bring that line across, even that line, the top of this vase on the right-hand side is lower than, right? So I'm going to bring it just right under here. That's where my vase is gonna start. Now again, I'm gonna start to define the side of this vase here, and I'm gonna relate it to this line right here. So how far off this side does this vase go? I'm thinking it's somewhere around here. All right. And I'm happy with that. I've placed these items where they need to. Yeah, I got it. Thank you. I'm gonna think about this overlap over here. Okay, how much of this can is overlapping the vase behind it, right? I'm thinking about this distance right in this corner. Let's get the other can. Now this is where that exercise of negative space consideration comes into play, right? I'm looking at the space between my items. How wide is that space? I'm gonna bring that line across. They're about the same height. This one, the one on the right-hand side seems to be just a little bit lower. And again, I'm thinking about how far off the right-hand side this can goes relative to the vase behind it, right? So I'm looking at this corner right here, this negative space. Okay, so again, negative space, I'm considering the space between the objects here and the space off the side of this object here, okay? Bringing that line down. These cans should be about the same width. Let's leave it at that for now, okay? Let's start to develop the apple down here. And you'll see how little by little this will come together. You see how I don't focus on one area too long until I have the entire composition nailed down. All right, I'm gonna get the general shape of this apple here. I'm thinking about how much of this is overlapping. I'm now thinking again, now I'm going to be drawing this can here, simplifying it into its basic shape, which is a cylinder. I notice that it is overlapping the can here. And I'm starting to bring down this line. Now remember that guideline I gave myself with this diagonal line here? That's gonna help me to not pass where I need to stop drawing the can. All right, notice that it's a wide oval. This shape in itself might be challenging, but it is a wide oval. All right, but I'm keeping it as a cylinder, right? Notice that curve right here, this curve right here. It's symmetrical, so this curve right here should actually match this curve right here, and it seems to do so. Okay, that's it for that. I'm going to draw the mug. Again, following this basic line that I've already set down. I can see that my mug is, you could say, the lowest on this plane, and it overlaps the can right over here on the center. So I'm thinking here, what is this negative space right here? What is this shape? That's how I'm helping, that's what I'm using to help me place the can where it belongs. The mug, rather. Now I'm gonna compare this mug to the can. What is wider? The can is gonna be wider. The mug shouldn't be so wide. Bring that line up. What is the height of this object relative to the can next to it? That opening is a bit more. Should be able to see that more. Excellent. All right. Now let's start to draw the bottle behind it. Straight line up. And this is where we come back to this can here. I'm gonna bring this line down. Notice that that can fit perfectly where it belonged. The can ends on top of this mug right here. Right, so if you've already finished this composition last week, just make sure that you're looking at the things that I'm pointing out and that they are where they belong. I'm gonna bring this line up. Now I'm gonna start to define the bottle, and the way I'm gonna do that is I'm gonna look at this negative space here. What's the space here relative to this space over here, right? This is thinner, about half the size. And this also now defines the side of the bottle. Right, so we were working on this bottle here. Now, when I start to define the bottle, I'm thinking about where does that cylinder end and the dome begin, right? The curve of that dome, and I'm gonna compare it to the cans next to me. This is the top of the can, right? This actually represents the top of this can. Let's start to define that, because I don't have that defined yet. Let's give it its dome. Small domes. Do the same on the other side here. Okay. So once I start to define that dome, I start to realize that it's a little bit too tall. So I need to bring down this line here. We're always adjusting. That's why we're not getting into the details just yet. Okay, again, I'm doing the same thing over here, and I notice that this line needs to come down just a little bit. Beautiful. All right, that's about the right height. All right, now let's start to get this bottle in, and I notice that this curve right here, my cylinder of the bottle will end right above that curve of the can. Right, again, always comparing. So this curve of my can, the cylinder part of the bottle ends right around here. I'm gonna add the dome, piece this bottle together. This is gonna help to keep your item symmetrical, right? So we know that this is a symmetrical object. Cut this in the middle, and you should have the same curve, same width, right, on both sides. I'm gonna bring top of this bottle up. Notice that it's not too narrow, it's not too tall either. Okay, so I'm thinking about where does this bottle stop, the top of this bottle end, relative to the objects next to it. Let's give it an organizational line to compare, right? And I'm looking at my image here. This might be the top of the vase behind it. I'm thinking about that. The height of the vase, I actually need to make some adjustments, right? That's why we don't go into the detail just yet. So I had to lower that vase a little bit. Right, because it's just off the top of my bottle. This is my bottle here. And the top of this opening is gonna be right around here. All right, I'm gonna bring in this line. Notice, this is what I'm looking at here. I'm looking at this part of the vase here as a shape. Look at that as a triangle, sideways triangle. If you nail that triangle down, right, you're gonna have the vase placed in the right place. Likewise, I'm gonna look at this piece right here as a triangle right here, right? Keeping it simple in your head so you place it right. If you're like, whoa, I gotta draw a vase, it's gonna be overwhelming. Draw that shape right there and it will be the vase if you put it in the right place. A little rhyme, call me Dr. Seuss. Boom. bringing this curve around, and notice that the side of this vase lines up almost perfectly with the side of the bottle here, right? And again, look at that triangle here, and look at this triangle that's forming right over here. All right, when I start to define the right side of this vase, I'm thinking again about how far off from the bottle is the vase. Okay. What is that space between the two lines? How wide is it? I'm gonna bring down this line, and now before I define the bottom of the line, I'm gonna see if it aligns with anything, and I'm gonna bring a line straight across the top of this mug here. And I noticed that the line for this vase is right around that same line as the top of this can, this mug rather. So if I bring that line across, I notice that they almost align perfectly, right? If anything, this vase is just below that line, just below it. Right, so you're piecing together in many ways the composition by relating it to each other, these different parts. All right, now we did not get the last bit of the top of this, so let's do that. Again, looking at the shape of the triangle. And if this triangle is correct, this triangle, this triangle, and this triangle, you will have this line right here formed properly. All you have to do is close out that line with a nice curve, and you will have that vase. So we're almost there. All right, before we finish up the overall composition, start adding shading, right? We're gonna start to define the side of this vase right here, and I wanna make sure that it aligns properly. So this is the top of my bottle here, and if I look, the vase is just to the right, just to the left, I'm sorry, of this bottle line. So I'm gonna bring that line of an organizational line up, and it's actually, the vase is actually just to the left, right? So if I place that just to the left, it will be in the right place. All right. So far, so good. Now at this point, gentlemen, we can start to nail down, clean up our composition of all the extra lines, and we can start to add value. So I'm gonna clean up my lines, any organizational lines that I had used, any symmetrical lines I've used, I'm gonna erase them. Any guidelines of any kind. Now it can start to get more specific, right? Really nail down certain parts of the composition and then start to add the value. So I know that everything is measured out properly. It's just these micro adjustments that I need to make, like in the details of the can and the details of the spray cans and the apple, that will start to really put this together, all right? I'm not too worried about cleaning up too much, because once I add the value, a lot of these lines are going to disappear, but any lines like I said, that I used to compare these objects to each other or to check its symmetrical aspects, I'm gonna erase. All right. So let's get into it. Now, I'm gonna nail down the can here. And again, the can is a cylinder with a dome on top. I'm gonna start to adjust the dome. The dome is a little bit thinner than the actual width of that cylinder aspect. And there's a line in there. Now we're getting specific. There's a smaller little opening on the top right here. Let's nail that in there. Pretty happy with that. Let's do the same with this one right over here. We have that line there. There's the dome is a little bit thinner. Make sure that you get that in there on both sides. And then it opens up at the top right here. All right. All right, now let's get the shape of this vase down. Let's make sure we have it. So notice that these parts right here are straight up and it doesn't go much higher than the top of these cans before it starts to curve. So you see that we have an angle coming down, angle going straight across. We have 3 angles, and then again an angle coming across upwards. Right, but it almost forms that like a U, right? It's just angular rather than curved. From there, it is a gradual curve upwards right around here. And I'm thinking about now this length. I gotta bring, I think, the top of this down just a little bit compared to the vase on the right-hand side. Okay. I'm going to bring this curve over here across, and remember it's symmetrical, so those curves should feel the same.
Sir.
Yes. Oh, hola.
¿Todo bien?
Todo bien.
Ok, buen día.
Igual. All right, and I'm pretty happy with that. Let's check this can down here. All right, check the angles. Remember to use your side of your pencil. Compare your angles to your reference image. Without changing the angle, you bring it across. Make those adjustments. It helps to close one eye. It helps when you're standing up too. When you're standing up, and if this was in front of us, we would stretch out our arm. But you could do the same if you're careful not to change the angle just with a flat surface like this.
Right. Good afternoon, Columbus. Let's wrap things up with a prayer and the announcements. Remember, O most gracious Virgin Mary, that never was it known that anyone could flood your protection, or your help, start your intercession with blessed amazing. Inspired by this confidence, I fly to you, O Virgin of Virgins, my mother. To you do I come before you I stand, with sorrow. O Mother of not my petitions, but in your mercy, hear and answer me. Amen. Saint Marshall Champagne, pray for us. Mary, good mother, pray for us. And let us remember to pray for each other. Okay, there's going to be a video sent out for the winner of the PS5. There was a drawing, there was a whole what have you that was recorded by Mr. Marinelli and Mr. Kruzak, and that'll be sent out to you guys so you can find out if you won. A reminder to Fine Arts and Performing Arts, you guys meet today for prayer at 145 over for the Union Plaza. French Week continues this week on Palms there. Pastor, please respond to Ms. Esse's email if you want a yearbook. Let her know that. There's a Patriot Club meeting today after school meet 25 with the esteemed Dr. Burris. You can Zoom that if you have a mind to. That's for seniors. There is a varsity wrestling team meeting today at 2 o'clock in the wrestling room with Coach Huss. Recommendation forms for sophomores and letters of agreements for juniors are both due today by 3 o'clock. That's from Ms. Copresi. There is intramural football today, good times indeed, over at Majestic Banning Coliseum. Anybody can play, including faculty. You just gotta have on shorts, t-shirts, and sneakers. Don't play in your school clothes. Don't change in the parking lot of the hallway. And as always, crosswalk. Sophomores, check your email from Ms. Brown and Cowboy about field day on Wednesday. Speaking of freshmen, you have pre-ACT tests on Wednesday. Sophomores, you clearly have field day. Juniors and seniors, you have asynchronous learning at home, which means stay at home, okay? Freshmen and sophomores, you guys should be done around noonish. Operation Coupon continues. You guys have done a great job with that. Please keep it up. Mr. Marinelli's NBA video game tournament is on the 18th. You can sign up for that. There will be chili dogs from our bettors tomorrow up in B26 where you can get your picture taken with the Tiger. The spike ball and soccer Castaways event is on the Columbus football field this Saturday at 11 and 2. Fueling Future 305 is going great, and is the Lotus House Drive. A bunch of diapers came in today for Lotus House. That was awesome, gentlemen, what you're doing. Juniors, you need to check your email about course selection. Next week, the drama, our outstanding drama club is having their annual improv show. Too Much Light Makes You Explore and Go Blind. Monday at 7, Tuesday at 4, Wednesday at 4, Thursday at 7 over in the Media Center.
We're shading in this vase in the back, and we're going to use what's called the reductive technique. So get yourselves like a 2B pencil.
That's enough for now. There's a couple other things on my computer.
And we're gonna fill this in with a nice middle tone. Don't get too dark just yet. Notice that the left-hand side is a little lighter than the right. Okay, now this is a trick, gentlemen, that's really important now that we're starting to shade. Okay, and that trick is to close one eye, not close one eye, rather squint your eyes, right? When you squint your eyes, gentlemen, you are going to simplify the composition, right? And you'll see what's the darkest darks, what are your lightest lights, and what's the middle tones. And you'll see that when you squint your eyes, the darkest values are gonna be the vase in the back,